Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's a pleasure to be here and talking to young lawyers. And to start, I would like to say, okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Ibrahim Yahaya. I work in-house at the National Open University of Nigeria. I'm sure most people don't know that lawyers exist in universities, but I'm in-house. It's basically compliance and regulatory. I've been a lawyer practicing for like 12 years, and 4 of that was in litigation, going to court, and it was a very good experience and prepared me for the in-house role. So basically, like you can see on my slide, I'm going to be talking about young lawyers, new law, and legal technology. Legal tech, shortcuts to success in a technologically driven world. You might ask, who are young lawyers? So, like I said, I'm sure the first slide was very colorful. I wanted to put lots of color because I felt that young lawyers should be colorful. Legal tech is colorful and new law is colorful. And considering the world we live in today, it's most professions are being disrupted by technology. New things are coming up. Games have changed, our phones have changed, and so has law. The legal community is getting bigger, and you can do most things with technology. Yeah, so the legal service industry is seeing disruptions, especially with the use of technology, and most law firms, most people, when you talk about a law firm, you have the idea that it's a big law firm having like 500 people. And for me, I think it's the definition or what we call them are big law firms. We call them big law. But right now, because of technology, there's a new type of law firm that's coming up, and it's called new law. For me, new law is a law firm that can just be anywhere. You can be at home, have clients send you work. You can have a virtual office, just you on your laptop, and other documents can be sent to you. You can work on it, send it back to your client. And for young lawyers, I think it's a transition. Mostly, I believe you don't have to stay looking for a job with a big law firm. You can start by yourself. So there was a study that was taken out in 2005, and it says that most lawyers would rather 5% of lawyers would rather open their own law firm than work for a big law firm. And I say yes, I agree to that because it's easier now in a technologically driven world. And the concept of a young lawyer for me, it's for someone, you can say it's the age, or it could be the fact that, okay, I could be 40 years old and I just graduated from law school. Am I a young lawyer? So it depends on what the definition you have, but basically the category of young lawyers should be people who are just fresh out of law school. So the age doesn't matter. It matters how old you are at the bar. And are you ready to take the next step? Does the next step involve looking for a law firm, or does it involve starting out on your own? Now we have this traditional big law accounting firms, Deloitte. Let me see, Deloitte. We have what would I call this other law firms? But like traditional big firms who compliance, they're into compliance. And what they used to do is they used to have in-house lawyers But right now, those in-house lawyers are competing with the people who they are supposed to help. That is the litigators in big law firms. What I'm trying to say is, as an in-house lawyer, you're supposed to give cases to litigators outside in the big law firms to do the work for you. But right now, it's easier for in-house lawyers to do all the work by themselves. They don't have to look for a law firm to do it. They can do it themselves. And usually, most of the in-house lawyers, like you find people who had worked in big law firms being seconded to work in companies as in-house lawyers. Now, all that is changing. You can actually start as an in-house lawyer and then move on to your own law firm instead of starting from a big law firm and moving over to an in-house position. And then there's this community of law firms that are coming up. It's basically online. They have lots of online resources. There are some examples of them in Singapore, Australia. There's Legal Vision in Australia. There's the Asian Law Network, and there's this bengo.com in Japan. They are changing the business model of law firms. And then we also have the rise of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has to do with the fact that you could tell a computer, ordinarily you can put something in a computer and tell it what to do, but with artificial intelligence, the computer can actually go further and give you more things. It can tell you more about what you're doing, and that alone is taking over a lot of the legal industry. You can use artificial intelligence to do e-discovery, like you can use it to ask questions before you go to court, before you go to litigation, contract analysis, compliance. It's replacing, so the computers or artificial intelligence is replacing lawyers. That's what most people think. And new law firms, as we said, NewLaw is taking over that because it's using technology, it's made everything easier. And like I said earlier, if you have an organization, maybe like Total, or I don't know what the biggest oil company in Russia is, maybe like Enron or something, and then you have in-house lawyers, but now you don't really need that. You can just have a computer system. Like I know in Russia you use practical law or resources in America like Westlaw, LexisNexis. That's artificial intelligence. You just put something in and it shows you what the question is or the answer is. So what then? How did the definition NewLaw come up? There's a consultant, Eric Chin. He was listening to one of the proponents of new ways of doing legal services, and he was talking about the fact that big law firms are already called, or traditional law firms are already called big law, and there's no name for alternative legal providers. And while sitting, he thought about it. He was like, okay, if traditional law firms can be called big law because they have lots of people, why don't we call law firms that are just coming up new law? And that's basically where the definition or the terminology new law came about. So, and it has, as I said, it has it doesn't do with just, it has nothing to do just with law firms. It's with everything, regulatory compliance, and so it's new law can be used to describe any model, process, or tool that represents a significantly different approach to the creation or provision of legal services than what the legal profession traditionally has employed. So it's a new system of doing things, and hence new, and then the fusion of law into it. Ernst & Young, that's one of the traditional accounting firms and compliance firms we had. They had over 250 lawyers in 2013, and that has gone up right now because they realized that it's not just about providing accounting services. You can actually provide legal services side by side with accounting or compliance. Deloitte, KPMG expanded their legal services offerings by hiring additional lawyers in the UK, Germany, and Asia. Like, for example, Pierre, his company is an American company, right? And he's based in France. So that's what big law firms do. So for firms, traditional accounting firms like KPMG now, they don't really have to depend on law firms like he has. Since they have branches in different countries, they can actually go in-house, hire their own lawyers in-house, and continue from there, instead of like having to start a new law firm in France or in Russia. As a company, you can just have a very good in-house team, and you use NewLaw, you use technology to achieve what the big law firms would have gotten for you. Using the example of Pierre and Ralph's presentation, they talked about regulations. Now, think about this. Laws are generally what the statutes provide, what is written down in the law books or made by Parliament. But when you talk about regulations, regulations are meant to explain what the law is supposed to be. Now, if you want to go into, like, you're Russian and you want to come to Nigeria to start a company, usually the first thing to do is you call up a law firm. I'm trying to set up a business in Nigeria. What do I have to do? Now, with the use of NewLaw, or artificial intelligence, you don't have to do that anymore. You can just use an application online and say, okay, I want to start a company. What are the regulations? Now, not the law. What are the regulations I need to follow to be able to start my law firm? So one of the first things the law will tell you is maybe you have to have shareholding of 1 million share capital to have a company, to have a Russian and a Nigerian company, 50% to the Russian company, 50% to the Nigerian company. Now, when the applications come in, it won't just state the law for you, it will tell you the regulation. It will tell you, go to so-so, or it will bring out a provision of the law, say section 1, subsection A of the regulations of Nigeria. Company law says you have to do this, you have to do this. Just like the same thing they were talking about. Regulations, there's so much regulations. Regulations are actually more than law in most societies because, like I said, regulations are supposed to explain what the law is. And for every lawyer, it's easy to find the law. But where you have a situation where the regulations are a lot, like, for example, the peer talked about vigilance sheets, compliance sheets, and things like that. So if you have an application, it's very easy to pull all those regulations online. And then when you're done, you can now call a law firm and say, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this. I know I'm supposed to do this. Can you just go ahead and start the process for me? It makes everything easier for everybody. Okay, so here I'm talking about the different evolution of legal services, the kind of different law firms we have, and why NewLaw is taking ground in the world, and why young lawyers should actually take this up as a resource. We have basically 5 different types of law firms: bespoke, standardized, systemized, packaged, and commoditized. So a bespoke service refers to a legal network where work is provided in a highly personalized manner. Now, for the fashion-conscious people here, when you say bespoke, you mean like my suit now, I can say it's bespoke. It's cut to my size, it's for me. And that's what this type of law firms seek to do. They seek to tailor legal services based on exactly what you as a client want and what you need. And they don't have to use forms and precedents in this kind of law firm. They will develop a form and a precedent based on what you want as a client. Standardization is where lawyers rely on tools such as checklists or procedures that prescribe good practices, standard form documents, or previous work products. So that's like what every normal law firm might do. You have standard law precedents. You just go up and you need a contract document. You just have, okay, all I have to do is change the name, change the dates. The terms are the same. If it's an environmental law case, the terms are different with each other. You don't have to change much. So that's standardization. Packaging, it's where you have IT systems available for clients, usually over the internet. There are two examples. For example, when a law firm offers their clients access to their internal knowledge systems. And secondly, when law firms provide access to document systems so that clients can produce their own legal documents. So here, it's I own a law firm, and the client calls me up and says, oh, I want to do this, I want this kind of type of document. You actually give them access to your database, and they can go into your system and use whatever form they want to do. And it makes things easier, and it's almost the same thing with what the new law companies new law firms are trying to achieve, but it's different just because you give the client direct access to your own documents, to your own standardized documents. And then the final step is commoditization. This talks about legal work that is so commonplace and routine that it can be made available in open source spirit on the web. So for example, I want a will like someone who has wants to leave property to his children, and he calls me up. I can just tell him, okay, go to Google, go to I don't know what search engine is popular in Russia again, but maybe like Yahoo search, and just pull up the document. He fills it and sends it in to the law firm to finish the job. And then I want to take an example of commoditization in Nigeria, the Corporate Affairs Commission, which is the body that is empowered to register companies, business name limited liability companies, or public limited companies, and non-governmental organizations, NGO. The government came up with a policy and regulations to make it easier for small and medium scale companies to start their own business. So usually what you had to do was download a form or obtain a form. You pay for a form, and you fill all your personal details into it. But at the end of the day, a lawyer has to sign and say, yes, you have complied with the rules and regulations of the Corporate Affairs Commission. So what the government did now is they took that provision away. Even as a small, maybe like a small business, you're just trying to open a small store, you can just go to the internet, download the documents. You don't need a lawyer. Just put your name, put your passport photograph on it, and send it to the Corporate Affairs Commission. And it's part of what the World Bank was trying to do in countries like Nigeria. I saw Ralph brought up a graph where he talked about ease of doing business in France, and France was rated like number 26, or was that corruption? But like out of usually there was a survey the World Bank did out of 174 countries of ease of doing business. How easy is it to do business? Nigeria was out of 174 countries. Nigeria was like 167, which is very, very low. And that's why the government came up with this policy to like, okay, let's make it easier for everybody to register companies. The only problems or the only places you would need a law firm is if you're like trying to take your company public, you're trying to get shareholders' money from the public. That's when the government will require you to do more legal work, and you have to hire a lawyer. So that's an example of commoditization. The government just makes everything open for everybody. Now, LegalTech, like I said, I've tried to explain what a young lawyer should be, what NewLaw is, and then now legal technology. Legal technology just means the resources every lawyer who has a NewLaw firm who is a NewLaw service provider wants to use, the kind of resources they use. I talked about LexisNexis and Westlaw. In Russia, I think you use practical law, Consultant Plus, and technology like that. A new generation of companies is now changing this, and it's including companies focusing on disrupting the practice of law and innovation in the legal industry, much like startups in other industries such as education or healthcare. So in the startup world, especially where technology is being used, you'll find that most people take like an idea that has been there for a very long time and they try to change something little about it and they say, oh, we are being innovative. So legal tech is where the law is going to now. It's taking the normal procedures, the normal forms and everything and putting it up in the website and then making it easier for everybody to access it. There's this new company, it's called Librio. They got some funding from venture capitalists some time back, and it's meant to make regulation and compliance easier for not just lawyers, but the general public. So you can go to their website, and they think the innovation here for them is law shouldn't be just rule-based. It shouldn't be about just lawmaking. It should be easier to find. It should be something that everybody should be involved in, not just lawyers, but everybody. If you need a law, you're a private person, you can just go to their app and pull up any information you want, and then at the end of the day, you contact a lawyer, and then you make everything easier. And it's one of the technology they're trying to use is it will answer the question for clients of what does the law require me to do before I take this step. So before you start a business or before you have a startup, what does the law require you to do? Does the Russian, like if I want to start a law firm in Russia, do I need to have so amount of experience before I start a company, or is it not necessary to have experience? Can you start a law firm straight out of law school? This application makes it easier for you to do. You just put it in, and then it will tell you the kind of regulations the Russian Law Federation has, or the Nigerian Bar Association. Now, in all of this, most people say new law firms and legal technology is going to take jobs away from lawyers, but for me, I think that is a wrong perception, because as much as possible, the law is so dynamic, sometimes it's so complicated that no matter how easy you try to make it, you need to talk to someone. You need to talk to someone who knows the law, who knows where to find the law, to make it easier for you. So even if you can download the resources online, do you know what the procedure, not the procedure, do you know what the terminologies exactly? Do you know what the terminologies mean? Do you know what it means to have a will and codicil? Do you know what it means to have a discovery before you go to court? I don't know how it is in the Russian system, but like for the American system and in Nigeria too recently, we had this thing where before you go to court, before you go to proceed to litigation, once you file your documents, you have to call the other party and say, okay, these are the documents I have, these are the documents I have. Do you need any other document before you call your witnesses? And once you have that, it makes the case easier. So you file all the documents and send it before the courts. It's called discovery. And it's the same thing now. It's like they say e-discovery. So you can, a law firm can send in all the documents they need to the other client online. He can send it back to them online. And traditional law firms will always have a place, no matter what, because someone has to prepare the documents. The only thing the computer or the technology can do for you is show you what to do. But someone still has to prepare the documents, especially for litigation or for civil cases. In the end, for me, I think one of the most important things as young lawyers is using myself as an experience. When I left law school, I was focused on getting a job in a big law firm, and I lost like 2-3 years running, going from one place to the other. Look, okay, I want to work in this law firm, I want to work in this kind of law firm, and it took a lot of time. But if, when I finished from law school, there was something available like this kind of technologies we've talked about, if it was available at that time, I could have just sat down in my house and started my law firm, very easy. But I found myself looking for a job for a long time, and you're a lawyer, you're not supposed to look for a job. That's why you went to law school. You're supposed to have the resources already, you know where the law is. It's not something you really have to learn under someone. It's something being a lawyer, it's experience. The older you are, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And if you start your own law firm as a young lawyer, it's an easier way to the top, it's an easier way to be successful. Even if at the end of the day you get to work in-house, I'm sure your stipends or your salary is going to be higher because you have done more jobs, you have a lot on your CV, things that you have done personally, not things you had to learn under someone. So at the end of the day, young lawyers should look to new forms of technology. I am not unaware of the fact that in some jurisdictions, maybe in Russia, there might be barriers to, like I said, starting a law firm. You might, in my country, there's this thing, before the laws were changed, there was what we called pupillage. That means you had to stay under a senior lawyer for like a period of 2-3 years before you can start your own law firm. But right now, that's not the procedure. You can start your law firm straight out of school. And then the second thing is finance. How do you get money to start your own law firm? You know, if you want to start a law firm, one of the first things that comes to your mind is, okay, I need to get computers, I need to get like 4-5 staff, lawyers, support staff, and maybe a company car. But that's not really necessary with NewLaw and LegalTech, because you could start from your house, you could start from your car, you could start from your laptop, and when the money starts coming in, when you get more clients, you're good to go. That's my vision for young lawyers. Start from where you are. Don't wait to get a job in a big law firm. As long as there are no regulatory barriers or to you starting a law firm, why not start immediately after law school? So I think I'm done.
Спасибо, Ибрагим. Я думаю, мы к вопросам перейдем чуть позже, а сейчас, наверное, мы послушаем Necdet'а. И, Necdet, we can start.
Yeah, it's better like this, sorry. So I have a bit of cold and the Russian weather is really not helping, so sorry for it. So what I would like to talk today is the problems that young lawyers face in Turkey and how these problems affect the profession, I mean the legal profession that we do. I think it's a good subject for also young Russian lawyers because you can compare the system. Two countries have many similarities. But before, I want to give a brief information about myself. I'm Necdet Yalçin, and I'm admitted to Istanbul Bar. I worked in a top-tier law firm which deals with maritime issues and ship financing. And then I changed it to in-house kind of legal advising and also making business connections with different companies. So now I'm working in Ankara. Yeah. So first problem that we have is the bad quality of legal education. I mean, what is the first fundamental thing to become a good lawyer? You need a good education. But the problem is in Turkey, we have a kind of tendency, when you say to make something better, it's all about the show. So what they do is, okay, to make the legal system better, they say, we start new schools, new law schools, to make more law students and to make them start the profession. But the problem is when you start many, many law schools, you kind of lose the control, control of the quality, I mean, because the students cannot really have good education, and then in the end, it's like in the system you have many lawyers with really low quality of education. But why there is this much law school? Of course, there is a reason. Because in public in Turkey, there is an understanding that lawyers earn a lot of money, which sometimes the real case, but not always, of course. And so everyone wants to send their children to the law school to become doctors, I don't know, the things which have respect in the community. But the problem is, we do not have a proper system to enter the universities. So in the recent years, we have many, many new law schools. Actually, currently in Turkey, there are 80 law schools, but 10, apart from 10, 15 of these law schools, doesn't even get accepted to jobs. I mean, when you see a CV in a good law firm, in a company, you won't even consider these schools. So this is a problem, because when you cannot control the amount of a number of professionals in a system, it creates a lot of problems. The chairman of the Union of Turkish Bar Associations also talks about this subject in many speeches, and I had personally the chance to talk with him also a couple of times, and they really try to change it, but they cannot, because all these private universities, they make good amount of money, so they cannot really stop them to take less students, increase the quality of education. And another problem is, after the law school, we do not have a bar exam, which is really rare. So all these students with a low level of education directly gets into the system. And the second problem is overpopulation of the lawyers, which is kind of connected with the first problem. Because since we do not have a bar exam, since we have a lot of new lawyers, young lawyers, people with a lot of people enter the system, and then what happens? There are many lawyers which are unemployed, which are incapable of dealing with good matters. So, I think this is one of the major problems that lawyers face in Turkey, because, you are a young lawyer who hasn't received a good education, and the following problem is you cannot find a job, and the main reason, as I told before, is that we don't have the bar exam to qualify the high quality of the candidates. And before coming here, actually, I was making research about overpopulation of lawyers in all the world. So this is like a huge problem. I couldn't finish the research, so I mean, I'm not fully knowledgeable about the situation now in the world. But for example, when Greece had the economical crisis, like they had maybe 60–70% of the lawyers unemployed because they had so many, and when the economical drop started, they all get unemployed. And this, actually, I have a table to show this. Like this is the capita per lawyer, and it's a data from 2015. And I mean, it's a huge, huge chart, but I didn't include every country. So what is capita per lawyer? So how many lawyers there are for in public for when you compare with the population? So the highest is, of course, USA. But I mean, USA has one advantage about this situation because they have a huge, huge capacity of economical capacity. So there is trade, there is the stock market, so people really need a lot of lawyers. But when you compare, like Turkey has this data for like pretty high, and it's from 2015, and it's really increasing the number of lawyers in Turkey. So let me see. Okay. So in the last 5 years, number of lawyers in Turkey raised 35%. And today, like there are more than 100,000 lawyers in Turkey, and the real problem is, it is expected that the next 5 years, it's going to increase even 60% more. So the table that you have just seen, this is the data of 2015. But if you think that in the next 5 years, it's going to increase 60% more, in the end, I mean, we will probably in the top 10 or something like this. Okay, like another problem is we have a really bad judicial system with many bad instruments. I mean, and lawyers have to work in a really slow system. So imagine your client comes to you and you cannot give you cannot even expect how long the judicial proceedings are going to take. And of course, for the profession, this is really a huge problem because it really reduces the reputability and the reliability of lawyers. Like many occasions when I was working, the client comes to you and kind of asks, okay, what is the success chance and what is the expected period for this certain amount of filing, for example. And you can never guess. You can never guess because the judge can change in the middle of the filing. The court can be like closed and kind of combined with another court. And all these things, of course, really, I mean, kind of disappoint first the lawyers, and then it disappoints the clients, of course, because you cannot satisfy their needs. You cannot satisfy you are not also satisfied by yourself because you cannot even give a reliable information to the clients. And this chart that you see in the presentation is like the number of court filings per year and average days that the file is completed. And obviously, this is not really reliable information because we have many files just get completed in the beginning for procedural reasons. So actually, like it's even more than these numbers. So it's like sometimes a commercial claim for regular commercial claim can take 2-3 years to be completed. And the problem is clients doesn't want to wait this long. So now there is a problem in Turkey that in many agreements, they put foreign judicial systems to like foreign courts to handle this disputes. And this, of course, creates a problem and decreases the quality of all the legal system. And as you can see, it's really increasing, and it's a bit of old data. So probably nowadays it's much, much more. And this is another chart. This is another chart, a table about execution proceedings. Execution proceedings. As you can see, like the left side is the number of procedural filings per year, like on the down. So it's really increasing, but not in a rapid way. But the problem is, since the time is every year increasing, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, you have kind of the same number of filings, but every year the total time that it takes is increasing. So as a lawyer, this is, of course, again, a really bad situation, because you cannot conclude a file in short time. You cannot conclude a file in short time, and then also for your client, he cannot make a proper business plan, because he can never predict legal times. This is also another chart about, as you can see, number of criminal, civil, and administrative filings per year. And the blue one, dark blue one, is criminal courts. Red one is civil courts, and the one on the bottom is administrative courts. So you can see the administrative doesn't change much, because it's more like about the standard administrative filings, but as you can see, really civil filings are increasing. And the main reason behind this is people economically, like the problems in Turkey, cause a lot of filing in civil courts. Like the thing I want to talk more actually is the political and political pressure on the judicial system and lawyers, which also probably more interesting for you. As you may know now in Turkey, like we have a state of emergency. So like after the unsuccessful coup attempt in 2015, there is a state of emergency, and it's been going on for now more than 2 years. And of course, this is a huge problem for lawyers. I mean, it creates an environment where it's really hard to perform the necessity of being a lawyer. So there are I think now 30, 40 lawyers in prison solely for performing just the profession. And really interesting thing is actually maybe also in the eastern part of Turkey there had another state of emergency situation, which was kind of a part of counter-terrorist counter-terrorist operation, I would say. And during these operations, the chairman of Diyarbakir, an eastern province, died. I mean, so the situation is, even there is a dead, a bar chairman of bar. The whole situation is a bit really complex. So government is trying to take measurements to keep the country in a secure place. This I completely understand. But there has to be, has to be made in a, let's say, more caring about the legal factors. So I also want to add some other things. Like when I was working as a maritime lawyer, many many problems I had is, like sometimes you go to court as a lawyer, and you cannot even find the judge, or the judge is there, but he says like, I'm busy. You have a trial. Sometimes the trials are delayed because of the personal issues of judges, prosecutors also. There is not enough, we don't have enough judge and prosecutors. This is one of the main factors slowing down the system. Like, according to the data, which has been released by the European Commission for the Efficiency of Justice in 2012, the judge and prosecutor number per capita in Turkey is the half of the European average. So I mean, so what we should do in Turkey, what we should do is, first we have to increase the increase the quality of legal education system. Maybe reduce the number of law schools, but increase the quality of education. And then it is very essential to implement a bar exam, because this is the only way to measure and challenge the quality of lawyers after law school. And third, after the bar exam, of course, we have to make some implements. We have to add some measurements to increase the speed and reduce the workload of the courts. So how to do this is now actually in 2016, I think July, they added a new court of appeal in the Turkish judiciary system. Before that, we had the first instance court and then high court. And now they put a kind of middle court, which is solely established for appeal. So now we have the first court of first instance, we have the court of appeal, and then we have the high court, which is mainly, which is the main duty is to make precedents, not work as a sole court of appeal, but more focused on making precedents. But I'm not sure how this, if this is going to be enough to reduce the workload of the courts, especially the high court. Because like this, the problem is like the way of understanding in public in Turkey. Like, so even for lawyers are like, they do not, sometimes they want to make all the proceeding longer because they get money. So the client comes and you know that it's not really gonna work, but you still think like, okay, I have a chance to succeed in this filing, and why not do it? Because I may receive money from my client. But this also really makes a huge workload on the courts and really reduces the respect of the lawyers in the community, I mean. So I want to keep it kind of short, and then maybe you have some questions, like some special questions about the problems or anything like maritime law or about the current situations in Turkey, I don't know. So I want to kind of keep it short and let you to have some questions.
Да, друзья, давайте, пожалуйста, перейдем к вопросам. У вас есть такая возможность, тайминг позволяет. Только напоминаю, что вопрос необходимо задавать исключительно в микрофон, иначе перевод не сможет быть осуществлен. Пожалуйста, давайте. Ну, молодой человек, будьте добры.
Тихон Дермидонтов, адвокат, председатель Национальной ассоциации молодых юристов Республики Саха-Якутия. Вот буквально недавно глава современных юристов Турции Чаглы, да, был арестован, да, как вы сказали, к сожалению, у вас в Турции преследуют коллег-юристов. Что вы могли по этому поводу прокомментировать? И еще второй вопрос. Я знаю, что в Турции запрещено работать адвокатам других стран, даже на принципах взаимности, да? И как вы считаете, такая ситуация в будущем изменится или нет? Спасибо.
Can I get the second question again, because it was for some of it was not clear.
Адвокат в России, вот российский адвокат не может работать в Турции, да, насколько я понимаю, даже на принципах взаимности. Если да, вот мы разрешим турецким адвокатам работать в России по турецкому праву, да, Турция пока не может разрешить российским адвокатам даже по нашему праву, да, практиковать в Турции. И как вы думаете, возможно ли изменение данной ситуации, да, в будущем в рамках Турецкой Республики?
Okay, so I will start with the first one. So I think this is a period for Turkey, because we had many unlucky, or I would say unlucky events, like coup attempt, and also like economically things are not that good for this time. So I see this all the thing as all this state of emergency thing as a limited thing, and like for a limited period of time. And I think the government and all the elements of the judiciary system will come to a point of agree at one point, because they will clearly understand that the current situation is harming the country, both the country's respect and both our legal system. But of course now, I don't approve that any of the lawyers are taken into custody or any imprisonment. But of course, it is important to understand that some of them were kind of also part of claimed terrorist organizations. So it is impossible to know about the background data or the evidences of these files. So I support if there is really reasonable amount of evidence, there can be some, of course, punishments, I don't know, like also legally and professionally. But of course, I think that it will reduce in time, and I hope it will reduce in time, and we won't see this situation in the long term. And the second question is, I mean, as I get the question, so Russian lawyers cannot practice in Turkey, but any lawyers, any lawyer from abroad of Turkey cannot actually work in Turkey as a lawyer, because you have to be admitted to a Turkish Bar Association. But of course, you can work as giving legal advices, not before the courts, but you can work as a legal advisor. And I believe that there are many companies that which are dealing with Russian companies, like kind of hire Russian lawyers for some advice. And since we don't have an actually bar exam, it's not very hard to become a lawyer in Turkey. I hope it kind of helped.